Morning, UTLA family. My name is Cecily Myart-Cruz. I am the UTLA NEA Vice President and UTLA President-elect. Today's Facebook Live will feature both myself and Alex Caputo-Pearl. Today's topics will include Alliance educators, reopening schools, and the budget fight, and lastly, racial justice. You can visit our website at www.utla.net for parent and member FAQs. I want to thank every educator, HHS personnel, volunteers at the Grab and Go. You all are doing amazing work. Thank you to every parent doing their absolute best, especially my parent friends in the Meals to Go Top Chef Facebook group. I want to send a special shout out to all the mamas and caregivers out there hosting classroom Zooms, cooking 3 meals a day, and managing your households. I want you to know that I see you and I am you. This crisis education is a roller coaster ride filled with lots of ups and downs, but we're making it through together. I remember week 1, Giovanni's teacher, Miss the kids, and just what we're in community with them. As we end our 11th week, he's engaging in art, talks with the principal, chess, and Friday's community circle with PSW Miss Shipley. And of course, some Fortnite and YouTube are mixed in there as well. I, like you, am trying to find the work-life balance, but I am cherishing the time spent together. I want to give a shout out to our newest UTLA members, the teachers at Alliance Gertz Wrestler and Richard Merkin Complex, Alliance College Ready Middle 5, and Alliance Judy Ivy Burton Technology Academy. They have prevailed after a 2-year legal delay by Alliance to try to deny their right to bargain and organize with UTLA. And 2 other Alliance schools will likely join them as a result of the ruling by the Public Employment Relations Board. This has been a long time coming. The passion of their fight for their voice in their profession is inspiring. I've been to many of those campuses, so I know. A united voice is so powerful in times like these. Our union enabled us to get a great agreement to help shape crisis education and our work for our students. Reopening schools. This new normal will not be permanent. We will be back in our classrooms when it's safe and healthy. Nothing can replace the magic that happens in our classrooms with a community of students learning together. Conversations about how we reopen schools ramped up this week after state and county released guidelines. This guidance from the state and county is only a framework. Every school district will develop its own plan. UTLA will be at the table with LAUSD bargaining what a safe reopening looks like for our schools. And we know that the health and well-being of our communities depend on us getting it right. We can't underestimate the challenge of opening schools in a way that protects students and staff and prevents children from becoming targets for infection in their own families. This is especially critical in Los Angeles, with students living with so many equity issues that the coronavirus has laid bare. High-density living situations with multi-generational families, the disproportionate exposure and death rates among communities of color, especially Pacific Islander and Black communities, and a lack of access to health care. We will not go back into bargaining until we have input from members, parents, and students. We are sending a member survey soon about reopening schools, and we're encouraging all chapters using their CAT structures to engage discussions about priority issues next week to shape the survey. It's critical that all UTLA members take part in discussions and submit the survey once it's available in early June. This fight is going to take all of us, and the stakes could not be higher. These are the most important actions you can take right now. Talk to your chapter chair about signing the Classroom and Communities Over Cuts petition. Regularly attend UTLA chapter meetings. Take the UTLA bargaining survey when it's released, and definitely wear red during your faculty meetings. Now we're going over to Alex Caputo-Pearl.
I want to thank Cecily for her great statement earlier this morning. I'm going to hand it back to her after I say a few things. We're coming to you, of course, from the Caputo-Pearl household, which you've gotten used to seeing. Come to you throughout the pandemic from here. We've got the baskets, we've got the clutter. I've got a new haircut. I've got my coronavirus haircut. I was saying earlier that my wife took me out in the backyard, was cutting my hair. She quickly had an audience. My daughter was saying, "Is Dad going to have to go out in public with that haircut?" My son was saying, "Hey, at this point, you should just cut it all off, shave it all off." And my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, was giving her lots of micromanaging details to try to cut my hair with. So, but we made it through, and I've got the coronavirus haircut. I want to say, just having heard Cecily this morning, how thrilled I am to be passing the baton of UTLA president to Cecily Myart-Cruz. July 1st, the official transition of the presidency to Cecily. But we've been in a transition process for the last couple of months, and we're going to continue that over the next month to make sure that this is smooth organizationally. And I am so thrilled to be continuing as a vice president here in LA of UTLA, a vice president of UTLA, under Cecily's leadership to continue building. If you want to fight for educational justice, LA is the place to be, and I'm thrilled to be working under Cecily's leadership. Cecily is going to be an exceptional president of UTLA. She's got experience, she's got strategic savvy and smarts, and she's got a deep connection to members, students, parents, communities. Her presidency is going to be an historic presidency. In the 50 years of UTLA as an organization, we have never had a woman of color as president. Now we do. Think about that. 50 years without a woman of color as president, when the plurality of our members are women of color. So this is going to be an historic presidency. On June 12th, when we come back to you on Facebook Live, we're going to talk more about that. I'm going to talk about how I've known and worked with Cecily for over 20 years. And I'm just thrilled to be passing the baton of the UTLA presidency to Cecily Myart-Cruz. More on that in June. As usual, want to say we love you. We're with you. We know this is tremendously difficult for students, for parents, for educators, for everyone. But we also know that tremendous work is happening out there. Just yesterday, I was on the phone with Martha Hernandez, who's the great chapter chair at Chase Elementary School. She's a kindergarten teacher. She was telling me about all the stuff she's doing with her kindergartners. And she was saying that she identifies her work not only as education, but also as activism in the immigrant community, working with so many of her students who come from immigrant families like her. It is so inspiring to see that. So as we continue in this year, we want to make sure that you keep on implementing the side letter that we bargained over spring break, and use that closing bulletin that came out a couple of weeks ago. Our bargaining team did another great job with that closing bulletin. They made sure that it was optional to go back into the buildings, clean up your classroom. And the reason that was so important is for people with pre-existing conditions or our members who are in vulnerable categories. They made sure that you have until June 30th to make sure to get everything, out of your classroom that you need out of your classroom, cleaned up, etc. And they made sure that any work that you do between now and June 15th in your classrooms to clean up has to fall under that 240-minute rule. We know that you've got things you're taking care of, your own kids, your own elders, etc. So that 240-minute rule is so important. And we know so many of our members are going above and beyond that, but we needed that as a floor, as a regulation, okay? Continue to track information. We have been communicating with you 3 to 4 times a week, plus social media. So really 50 or 100 times a week as UTLA to our members and to the community. On Mondays, we have chapter talking points that go out with new information for chapter chairs. On Wednesdays, we have the frequently asked questions emails to all members that go out. And on Fridays, we either have all member emails or Facebook Lives, just like today. So continue to track that information. We know how important that is. So I want to echo a couple of things that Cecily said, because they're so important. One is, remember, the reopening of schools is something that has to be bargained. Your union, our collective union is going to bargain this. So we have your back, and we have students' backs, and we have parents' backs. Second, any reopening is going to be based on science and on public health expertise. Third, health and safety of students, of families, of educators, of our members are going to be absolute top priorities, okay? And by the way, in our weekly communication, our health and human service professionals have just been fantastic with those Wellness Wednesdays on Facebook Live. Now, in terms of that bargaining that is going to shape the reopening that we're doing as a union, you're going to shape that bargaining, okay? So I want to echo what Cecily said. Chapter chairs received an email yesterday with ideas about how to hold a chapter meeting. You should do this between now and next Thursday. Hold a chapter meeting and talk collectively as a chapter about what you want to see driving the reopening of schools, okay? And we want you to look at, of course, health and safety. What should drive that? What should drive stuff around the educator load? But also look at the wellness of the whole child. Look at that issue. What are students going to need coming back to a reopened school? And also look at what do families need and communities need in terms of job development, in terms of healthcare, et cetera. All of that needs to be tied to having a safe reopening of schools. So have a meeting with your chapter between now and next Thursday. And then late next week, a second round of surveying will happen, which will be individual. So an individual member survey will be sent to all UTLA members for you to go more in depth on those survey questions. So please make sure, participate with your chapter between now and next Thursday, and then do the individual survey starting at the end of next week, and that is going to shape our bargaining. And remember, health and safety are going to guide us, and racial and social justice are going to guide us, okay? Look at the LA Times today. Front page story, top of the fold. This virus is affecting low-income families and communities of color much more dramatically than white families and middle-income and upper-income families. And we have to take that into consideration, given that our students are 85% from low-income communities and 90% from communities of color. So any reopening has to make sure that we don't double down on the already systemic racism and class bias that defines our system, okay? So we want your input, we want your feedback. Make sure you do that in these surveys, okay? Now, I want to talk a little bit about budget cuts. We are building a movement, not just for the reopening of schools, but for reopening safely and improving. There can be no reopening without also improving our schools. We cannot have budget cuts, and also expect to open safely. It is completely counterintuitive, and it is a fantasy if people think that that can happen. And we cannot go back to the status quo. The status quo was California languishing at 40th out of the 50 states in per pupil funding, systemic poverty, limiting the opportunities of our students. We cannot go back to that status quo, okay? So we must be organizing under the banner of reopen and improve our, okay? To be clear, educators, I talk to educators every day. We want to be back with our students. You see all of these car caravans where our teachers and educators are driving through the neighborhoods of their schools saying hi, socially distant hello to their students. Our members desperately want to be back with our students, but we can't do that if it's just going to make things unsafe, okay? Now, what are we doing about this? We're writing with the 7 other locals that we're working with. Actually, it's more than 7 locals. Many of the local unions across California, including CTA and CFT local, are writing a letter to Newsom and Thurmond, Governor Newsom and Tony Thurmond. And we're saying that $13 billion of cut public education is not going to cut it. We cannot have cut. Secondly, we're saying in that letter, you've got to support schools and communities first, which is the ballot initiative in November, that they could turn into law right now with 2/3 majority in Sacramento. Support schools and communities first for more money and additional revenue measures for more money for our schools and for our communities. The third thing the letter is saying is that the reopening process must be a deliberate process. We will not be rushed. You don't rush into a buzzsaw, okay? It's got to be deliberate. It's got to take in student input, parent input, community input, union input, all stakeholder input. We will not be rushed in this reopening process. Fourth, it says that this cannot be an opportunity for charter schools and the privatizers and the charters. We've got many great charter educators within UTLA. Cecily mentioned the Alliance educators. We've got other great charter educators, but they're not folks who believe in the corporate charter ultra competition model. So the fourth thing that our piece says, our letter to Newsom and Thurmond says, is that no charter school should be able to open before the district schools around them open. Because if we allow that to happen, then charter schools are going to siphon our students away under a competitive model that is not appropriate for public education, not appropriate for public health. And the fifth thing that our letter to Newsom and Thurmond says is that there should be no new charter co-locations. No new charter co-locations right now. District schools need to know that they've got space to work with in their, for socially distant classrooms, et cetera. Co-locations are at this point. We've been working with Menlo Elementary, who had 25 people out at an action the other day. Maple Primary Center, which is banging on Monica Garcia's door. And we're targeting those charter schools that have applied for federal bailout money. Disgusting. Federal bailout money that should be going to low-income families. Charter school operators have applied for that federal bailout money and gotten it, and using it to line their own pockets. Disgusting. We're going after them. So these are the things that letter to Newsom and Thurmond say. Things that you can be doing. Sign the petition. Talk to your chapter chair. We have a communities and classrooms over cuts petition. We know that these budget cuts, they're going to target our pensions, they're going to target our health care, they're going to target our programs for students, and sign the petition that we're driving with several other locals across California to go against those cuts, okay? And we're using that petition to build our structure to get ready for more militant action against cuts if we need that, okay? Remember, we are more prepared than we were in 2008. In 2008, we got crushed by the economic collapse. This economic problem is going to be worse than that, but we are way more prepared because of the work we've done as a union over the last 5 years. So be confident. And part of the reason we can be confident is this. The money is there. I'm going to repeat that. The money is there. It's the political will that we need to be there. And how do you create political will? By mass action on the ground. Billionaires have increased their money in their pockets by $434 billion over the course of this coronavirus epidemic over the last 11 weeks. $434 billion. The money is there. Jeff Bezos has made $35 million a day during this pandemic. The money is there. California can raise billions of dollars with new taxes on those who can afford it, the rich and corporations. They're not going to leave California. California is the place to be in terms of infrastructure, weather, everything. And all of this can go towards schools, but also towards social services. So we should be confident when we sign that petition and escalate and get ready for militant action that money is there. To end with this, because I'm going to pass it back to Cecily. And Cecily's going to double down on this, but I want to frame it up a little bit and tee it up a little bit. I already talked about some of the absolutely critical elements of this coronavirus pandemic that show racial injustice, okay? And UTLA over the last 6 years become one of the strongest forces for racial justice and civil rights in the United States. We have made sure over the last 5 years, starting in 2016, when we started advocating to get schools and communities first on the ballot, we made sure that California is 41st out of 50 among the states in per pupil funding. That must be seen as a racial justice issue because increasingly our student population are Black and brown. So we made sure that that was framed around racial justice. In 2015, we formed Reclaim Our Schools LA, which is a broad community and civil rights and racial justice coalition where we've been working with community organizations to take on the issues of housing, which have a disproportionate impact on communities of color. The school to prison pipeline, which have a disproportionate impact on communities of color. We have consistently, over these years, taken on police brutality, and I'm proud that we've done that. And our strike set a new standard for strikes across the United States by taking on common good issues. We took on the searches of our students, which were carried out in a racial profiling way. We took on getting the district set up an immigrant support fund. All of this has been UTLA charting the way over the last 6 years and becoming a leading national voice on racial justice. And now it's time to take that level because this coronavirus crisis is laying bare even more racial justice. So as I pass it back to Cecily, she's going to talk about how we take it deeper from here.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us, UTLA members, parents, students. We know that in this time of virtual technology, anything can happen. So thanks so much for staying with us. So now I want to talk about racial justice. After years of disinvestment of our schools, we need more resources, not less. We need a public education bailout because our students and communities deserve those safety nets so that the impact of this pandemic is not borne on the shoulders of our babies. Our SPED students who are marginalized by the COVID crisis need us to continue to fight for them because we know there's an overrepresentation of Black and brown youth. As communities of color die at higher rates from COVID-19 and Black people die at the hands of police like Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, and countless others, we grapple every day with the fallout of systemic racism. I have lost sleep many times in my life, but I have continued to struggle this week in particular. I think back to 1989 when I was an 11th grade student at LACES and went to go see Do the Right Thing. At the end of the movie, the character Radio Raheem gets murdered and his last words were, "I can't breathe." That haunted me. And in 2014, when Eric Garner pled for his life, he said those words again, "I can't breathe." I was shaken. And just a few days ago, George Floyd echoed those same words. He couldn't breathe. We are in a constant state of grief that is being compounded by the recent murders of Black people by law enforcement. not to mention the false accusations by white men and women that could have potentially resulted in death. Our schools are still grieving the loss of daily contact with their teachers, counselors, health and human service professionals, peers, and the schools that provided them that safe space. As we thrust them into this digital space to learn and socialize, they're being bombarded by these images and videos of Black people being murdered. They are traumatized, and heck, so am I. Educational institutions like the University of Minneapolis are taking a stand against racial injustice. Color of Change, Black Lives Matter LA, and other community organizations have put out petitions, participated in protests to call the light, shine the light on this injustice. Our fight for racial and social justice defines UTLA as a progressive union, a union that stands with students, with parents, and with our communities. I'm not sure you know, but teachers of color make up approximately 20% of the teaching profession. That means we are calling on all educators, especially white educators, because they make up the majority, to be present, to use their platforms, to use their voices, to be more than just an ally in this space. We all have an obligation and a duty to be anti-racist. We have to stand together for the betterment of our students, for our communities that we serve, and for society. In the face of injustice, I know that we are stronger together. And I always take heart in the movement that we are building. We do this work keeping our students at the center and the core of everything we do. There will be struggles ahead. I know this. You know this. But we're going to do this work together. We have to, because it's incumbent upon us. Students are watching us. We are watching us. The public is watching us. And we have to take a stand. Now is that time. Now, I want you to have a great weekend, a fantastic one. I want you to take care of yourself. I want you to be safe. But also, we've got to be about self-care and wellness. And I say that not only to you, but I also say it to echo it for myself. Take time and be reflective. We are great together. We are UTLA. And let's not forget that we stand for all educators and at the core for our students. Thank you so much and have a great day.
When our students and teachers are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back!